it's pretty nigh impossible to be in that state 24/7. It's, as you say, it's a practice. And I'm hearing you saying, to have that awareness, being here for Allah or not being here for me, because this one gets caught up so much in the me and trying to get rid of that. But I suppose, are we just trying to get better and better at the practice? Maybe that's what I'm trying to ask, Sheikh. That's what the aim is.
The aim is to be in a balanced state where you know that you are working for Allah, and that with that you can keep a fairly clear balance and know what the adab of the moment is.
Okay.
But when that slip slides away and you're back to general meanness, then it's helpful to go back to the default adab of what would be right in this situation if you're not sure.
Yep.
I see that as one of the purposes of adab is, well, you do the right thing at the right time. It'll maybe help get you back into that balance. But I know we all have defaults, and we all kind of fall into old patterns.
Yeah, exactly.
The trick is, which old pattern would you like to change? And if you're going to do that, that means that's going to be a new pattern. And new patterns are hard to
kick in,
put into gear because they want to default to the old one. So this is part of understanding yourself and how you learn and how you grow. And like I've talked about before, we all carry around these general intelligences. There's about 5 or 6 of them. 2, I think, are strong and the rest are going to be weak. That's been my experience. I could be wrong about this, but I kind of going on, the visual, kinesthetic, analytic, and oral intelligences. And usually the 2 are strong and 2 are weak. And then I keep discovering new ones. Like I think there's geometric and emotional and textural. And I'm sure there's more. But knowing yourself and what are your strengths helps you carry through when you have to deal with your weaknesses. And kind of, when we first start out, I ask about, doing an inventory. What do we got to work with? What is this? What do you bring into the game here? And the game is usually, a whole lot of family stuff, some traumas, some embarrassments, and some successes. And trying to see, so where do you want to go with this? What do you want to do? Well, I want to be better. I want to do better. I want to learn what I need to learn. And and then the question of what do you think you know? And then as opposed to what do you really know? And in this case, I'm going back to the original Greek. The word know comes from gnosis, Gnosis. That knowing I think of as being that which cannot be taken away from you. For example, love for your members of your family or your partner, or love for some aspect of nature, or appreciation of beauty, and maybe, I don't know, maybe that you love Allah, or maybe that you love being alive. I mean, there's something that's there that you wouldn't be you without it. And it's different for everybody too. And then the next phase is figuring out, well, what do I want to grow and what do I need to get rid of? And that's where the working on what am I attached to? What am I identifying with? And if I identify it with it, is that really me or is it something made up? Something that just kind of agglomerated onto me. Is that a word? So learning what those are, like thinking you're special, or thinking that you're an individual and that you're independent and that you can do things yourself without anybody's help. That's kind of like, no, that's not. That's not real. That's made up. Nobody's independent. And anybody that is, I'd like to see them, if they drive a car, go and mine the oil for the petrol and the metal, get that out and build it yourself, and a refrigerator too. While you're at it, if you're mining iron ore, why don't you make yourself somebody did this, made themselves a toaster and realized this is hard.
From scratch.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. He had to go figure out where do you get, the metal, and then make the little springs inside that heat up, and the spring that holds it down. And I mean, the whole design of it as well. So taking anything for just a moment to focus in on that, can you build that? Can you do anything like that? And it's kind of like, no. So somebody tells me they're independent, I go, good, you made your own clothes. That's fantastic. It's hard. We are completely interdependent. And that goes all the way back to the beginning in, physics, that you can't get complex atoms unless you've gotten two big stars and smashed them together. That's the only time it can happen. We didn't just come out full blown. So physics, it works. Any questions about that? Anything you want me to open up here?
There's something that you said about, what one identifies with. I think for me, a little bit of the challenge is, sometimes you move into, namely sort of some certain friends or family. And when I'm in that environment or those surroundings, I find myself merged into that identification, all the while knowing I'm observing that, this is not really real, but hey, I'm trying to do the adab thing here of just, making sure people are okay or safe or comfortable, whatever it is. And then when I leave that, it's like, okay, I can drop that facade. So I'm sort of witnessing and observing that for what it is. But there's like a should that's still on my shoulder, that, maybe you're not being, your true authentic self, and you should be more authentic. So that's sometimes a little bit of the challenge that I have, Sheikh, within my journey. So just to get that, we talk about balance sometimes. Yeah, so what is the balance? So is it okay to put on that facade in that environment, all the while knowing that you're holding that facade for the sake of, adab, but it's not really who you are, but you're doing it? Or should you just be, more of that authentic self?
One of the oldest artifacts that we have from cultures, human cultures, from all time are masks. And masks come into play in putting on, becoming a character, a god, a goddess, a demon, an angel. Anyway, the idea of masks in traditional cultures are sacred. And the idea of identity is, something that we do personally, but in context with others. There's a time and place that you have to play a part. Otherwise, you will disturb the norm, the social norm. And putting that mask on, there's nothing wrong with that. And it's part of like our job, In reality, I kind of default back to a movie called Cocoon. way
Oh,
back
yeah.
when an alien comes and she's put on a human body, but when she takes off her face, she's just pure light.
Mm.
And that's how I think of us. We're pure light, but for a little while now, we have to wear this thing that came from monkeys, chimpanzees, and that it's going to do what it usually does. It's going to default. If you don't stay in control of the puppet, it will default to. Of course it will. That's kind of its breeding. That's what it's been bred to do. So part of this is trying to stay in charge of what mask are you wearing and recognizing that it's a mask. And that by revealing what's under it, you will upset a lot of people. So we do the best we can given the context of especially time and place. So there's a context, especially if you're, in a family or a relationship, there's a give and take, and there's a negotiation always going on of like, how much do I reveal? How much do I keep the mask on? And in some relationships, you can remove that a little bit more than normal. But it's context. In Sufism, we recognize that we are light. We are beings of light put into this situation, and we don't have to hide it. We're aware that it's kind of like, this is pretty funny. This can be amusing and catastrophic at the same time. So, because we're dealing with matter, we're dealing with things that have pain and joy and pleasure and contentment. The thing that I got from the Don Juan books, even though they are fiction, his idea of a sorcerer, putting on his suit to go to work and nobody knowing that he's a sorcerer is kind of like, I like that idea. That makes perfect sense. You don't have to show and explain to everybody who you are. It's really unnecessary unless it's part of the context that you're in, like what we're doing right now. This is praying to Allah. This is us talking with Allah, that we're recalling where we come from, what our original source is, which is love and light. But if we talk about that with the wrong people, they will be disturbed. They will be upset. And they go, what are you, some kind of raghead or trying to be spiritual? I hate spirituality. There is no God. And, and they go off into their belief system, which for a lot of people is an unbelief system, but it's still about beliefs.
Yeah, I think that's what stemmed, my questioning, because just recently I caught up with friends of ours, of Lisa and I, and they're good friends and sort of we see them regularly, but he's a beautiful person, but we started getting into this conversation about, is there a God, isn't there God? And he's an atheist. And so I started like opening up a little bit, and he sort of like, I could see that he was starting to get somewhat uncomfortable, and I shut it down quickly. But I thought, just sometimes how much do you reveal and how much should you reveal? And then and so this made me question about, other parts that I play within family and friends and so forth. But I really like the thing about the masks, about putting the mask on and then taking it off. No longer needed.
What you said before, Alameen, about how far do you go in when in this kind of discussion about God or Allah or something? And to me, what Sheikh always taught, he said, you don't go out and try and fix people unless they ask you a specific question in relation to that, which means that they're ready to talk about it. You don't push it because they didn't bring it up.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you can't ask a question or tell a story, but you can't go, you can't go front door
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah.
You have to be oblique about it.
I agree with you. I mean, the thing is, we're not here to show people, to tell people about being Sufis. We're here to grow fruit and give them the fruit, right? If they want to come and learn how to be a tree, that's fine. But if they don't, who cares?
Yeah.
I mean, and half the people I know who are atheists are much better adab than people who are religious anyway. So maybe
Yeah, that's true.
let him be a good atheist rather than a bad religious person.
Well, as Sheikh says, they have their own religion, being an atheist.
They have their own
Well,
beliefs.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Are you a true Anzakian?
What are you saying?
Anzac. You have to
Oh,
believe
okay.
in the sacrifice of our soldiers in the neoliberal market and interest rates. Do you believe in interest rates? Because we have to make sacrifices to the Federal Reserve Bank.
Mm.
Otherwise, they're going to increase the interest rates.
Yeah. Well, I think that's just going on that that topic. I think that's what's probably good about, or maybe I shouldn't say good, but yeah, about our tarika, when you were saying, Sheikh, that sort of you moving without being recognised, and sometimes you observe like other Sufi tarika, especially traditionally, there was the whole clothes and the hats and so people easily identified them.
The hats are very
But yeah, but I like the idea of going undercover.
If you approach it also as curiosity, as science, you're here to learn a law. We all are, and that everything is a teaching. Everything, is get as much as we can out of whatever the situation or experience is. And that takes us, it keeps our mind open and flexible. And when somebody comes with a contrary point of view, to try and see it from that point of view means that we are extending our critical thinking base so that we're trying to understand how other people think. It opens up part of our mind. I mean, for me, and probably for anybody who does teaching, if some person that you're teaching is not getting the lesson, it means they're thinking in a different way than you are. And you have to figure out, well, what is your perception? How do you see things? Because you're having trouble with this when everybody else is not. So I have to puzzle this one out and readjust and reexamine my approach with you. I just had this happen, Wednesday night, a piano student. He's really smart, but it's hard for him to focus for any length of time, and especially trying to read music. And so I kind of went back to what I'd learned about autism and thought, I'll make it into puzzles. And I'll ask him questions rather than telling him what to do. And that seemed to work a lot better, as well as, making little rewards go along the way and go, yeah, good job there. So learning to adjust our approach to different situations and experiences and people keeps us flexible. And that flexibility is part of what keeps us alive. Without flexibility, we become brittle. You become hard and not flexible, making it difficult for you to shift to new things and new ways. In situations, sometimes for me, I have to kick myself and go, no, that's your old way of thinking. This person's got something that's completely different that you're not aware of. You have not thought along those lines before. And so I'll have to ask them questions. I'll have to figure out, well, how do you see things, and get specific about it so I can learn their point of view.
Often they've got something to teach you as well, besides they've got actually something to teach you. Working with these kids, one of them was having difficulty doing the addition algorithm, and I couldn't work out, why. And it turned out it was because he's so good at adding numbers in his head, he doesn't need it. To him, he was just frustrated because it was slow.
Yes. Wow.
And when he could actually add the numbers faster without using it and he was accurate. And he taught us all some really good mental strategies. So he taught me.
Yeah. You never know when a lesson's coming in. And the lights don't flash.
Unless you're getting pulled over for speeding.
Yeah, then you're learning something.
Flash.
Alameen, does that help answer your question?
Yes, yeah, thank you, Sheikh. It does. Yeah.
It's a tricky thing living in this contemporary world with all of these different faces we have to put on to get through the different relationships that we are in.
No, I was just saying, I like what you said about maybe seeing people within, the ape monkey body, but there's, the light that's inside every one of us. So they come in all these different shapes and sizes. But if we see beyond that, the light, and they're just playing out their own conditioning, whatever that may be. But this one anyway, I tend to initially judge that first appearance, but there's so much more beyond that.
Yeah. Now this is just my view of things. I'm not saying this is how you should look, but for me, it's kind of, when I look at somebody, it's not like, yeah, they're here, but they've got this time extension behind them of all the other experiences and maybe lives they've had that they've caught, and that we're seeing them just at this point. And this is the sum total of what they've gotten so far. And we're seeing that output in this moment. And everybody is at a different place. Nobody has, there's some somewhat parallel motion, but I see everybody is at different points along the road of education. And then you can't compare yourself with somebody else. There could be, there's no worldly reason why you should compare yourself, because there's so many variables that makes up each of us. And that we're each unique because of that. Insanity, they say, is when you try and do the same thing over and over again and get the same answer. I think it's the same when you try and think you want to fix people, or that you want to, you have expectations from somebody that is not in that place that you expect them to be, or that you want them to be. And that's hard. It's hard to accept somebody just as they are. Yes?
Yeah.
There's hurt going on.
And that also goes for ourselves. I wish, especially when you learn a new lesson, you go, I wish I'd known that before.
It would certainly cost less money.
Absolutely. Definitely that. So I was going to go off a little bit about surrender and what that really means, because I think in English it has a give up context to it, which I think is useless. It has nothing to do with giving up. It means what I was talking about before, of identifying what our attachments are, what we are identifying as, and looking at those, which very often are subconscious, where we're not aware that we're thinking that way. But it goes all the way across all different contextual perspectives, whether it's gender, age, education, any of those kinds of things. It's all going to be about hakika, the reality of what we have and what we have to work with. And being honest about that. Not that we shouldn't have expectations and, I can do better, but also realizing that it's all a process, that it's not like you achieve enlightenment or perfection. It's more an ongoing process of re-examining what you know and comparing it to what you've just learned. And some of it is ongoing. Some of it is a continuation. And, you know, as you work through NAF, some of them are preparing you for the next level. And though you think, well, I don't need to have that anymore, maybe it's connected to something deeper. And you are working on that. And the idea of surrender in this case is understanding that the process of getting closer to Allah is getting rid of anything that interferes with that connection. So we're really good at holding umbrellas in front of us and going, well, I don't want light to fall on me. I don't want blessings to be on me because A, I am not worthy. 2, I've done bad things. 3, and on and on. And these, you know, I'm a loser, or I'm spiritual, or I'm a Sufi, or, you know, whatever you identify with is always going to get in the way of the actual connection with Allah. And understanding how that works in each of us independently, in the sense of like, yours is different than mine, is important to recognize and articulate. And the surrendering part of that means that you are aware that you have occlusion. You have astigmatisms between you and Allah. And the process of what we're working on now, of getting rid of the nafs, is learning to recognize and articulate what those blots are and figuring out a way to remove them. And that the more that you remove them, the better and more efficient you become in dealing with them as they arise. So there's a kind of like cleaning out the closet first and then figuring out, how did I do that? And becoming more efficient on the day-to-day attachments that happen necessarily. And that's why the fluidity, the flexibility is important to go, yes, I know I have a problem with that. I'm working on it. And being honest with yourself. Questions?
But going back to what you were saying before about how we're balls of light inside the monkey suit. And I know it's a simple answer, but my brain is just getting annoyed of like, how do you stop the monkey suit from taking over? It's very frustrating.
Good question. First, you have to accept it, that I have some default systems. And when this happens, that triggers my old circuit that takes me into anxiety or frustration or stress. So you have to know what your buttons are. And it could be around certain kinds of people or specific people that put you back into that mode, especially family and friends can, because you've known them so long, there are these little commands that can be triggered. And to recognize those, learn to recognize those when you're with that person or situation, and understand that you're going to fall into that routine, and then you prepare for it. You work on that. You can work on that there's a couple strategies you can do. But the other part of that is learning how to shut down the chatter. And to do that, you need to stop completely, totally, for just a few minutes. And that you work on that over time, and that you need to do it every day so that you practice learning how to put the brakes on monkey chatter. And that's what I wrote about last article, was about how to stop. And the way to do that, the simplest way, is to sit and breathe. Don't think. If you have thoughts, take it back to the breath. Don't play games with yourself like, oh, I'm so stupid. It's kind of like, just shut up. Just stop. for at least 5 or 10 minutes. Alamin, you've been working on that, yes?
Yes, Jake, yes.
How's that going for you?
It's interesting because you do try and, yeah, you said try and stop the brain and just be aware, but you realise how much of the conditioned mind just continually wants to chatter and talk and think about this or think about that, and then you observe how the wiring is just so automatic, and then you're like, well, where are all these thoughts coming from, and why am I so fixated on thinking about I have to do this and I have to do that, and what's wrong with just sitting here and there's this chatter going, there's this real like tennis go or this game going on, and it makes you think, well, is this how my mind operates every day, all day?
Mediterranean people don't sit, Alamin.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Yeah. So it is an interesting experience or experiment, as you say.
Yeah, so to stop the brain, that is the most efficient way, is not to get lost in any kind of technique or special thing you do or anything. The idea is just stop. Flatline for a little while. Now, what happens is if you've ever been out in the ocean on a little boat, it'll always be rocking. And then if you've ever been in a storm, it will be very big rocking. And the idea is to bring your storm down until you're just getting a little bit of rocking. And that rocking comes from the default of daily life and learning to be more in charge of your brain. And the best way to be in charge of your brain is to keep it oxygenated. And so the breathing slow and just without forcing anything, no force at all. You don't force the breath, you don't even count it. Now, there's a lot of techniques about breathing. And if you just want to get started, it's just sit and breathe. You keep your eyes open, keep them closed. I don't care. There's no right way. But in learning to become aware that there's a chatter going on all the time, helps you realize and your intention needs to be clear about this too. I'm just going to sit here and breathe. Yes, the brain's going to kick into gear and it's going to go back it's going to whir. The cogs are going to go. That's totally normal. That's its default. You've made it the default. You'd like to change the default. You'd like to change the default to calm. But you guys have all been on Helvets. You've been on retreats. You know what the first 3 days are like. You can't even get started until after 3 days have gone by. And finally, your brain starts to go, I don't really need to work anymore, do I? I'm on retreat. I forgot what this is like. But it's hard to remember that.
My problem is, because I always forget things and miss things, is that I always worry that, I'm being irresponsible by stopping, which is actually the opposite. It's actually more responsible to become, because you're able to respond when you are still and centered. But it feels like a waste of time when you have things that need to be fulfilled, because it seems like it's taking time away from those duties. So the tricky part is convincing yourself that this time is well spent and that it will actually provide energy and focus for the next task. I've been learning that a lot from my kids at school as well, because I've got this rhythm going now, but we do a task and then we have a rest time, and then we do a task and then we have a rest time. And I'm teaching them breathing as well. And whenever I will skip over the rest time and try to do two things in a row, or skip over the breathing, it just goes, And it's just like, it's a really good reminder, like that if the water's not still, you're going to splash, you're just going to end up splashing around, not achieving anything. So
It's inevitable.
you got to start the right way. Otherwise, what you're doing is kind of just wishy-washy.
That's true. And to understand that even if you started today, again, it'll take 4 to 5 days before your brain understands what you're trying to do. However, by doing that, you are learning how to maintain a presence, your own presence, your own heartfulness within yourself in more situations that you wouldn't usually be able to. Because you're able to stay grounded, you're able to bring your brain back under control. You know what I keep saying is, so who's in charge of your brain? Take charge when you can and let go when you can, finding that balance. But you have to know what balance looks like and what it feels like. Nominal means everything is working fine. It's perfect. Everything is where it's supposed to be. That means for our brain, what is nominal for you? Where is it when you are at rest, yet functioning? What does that look like? You're in your happy place. You're rested enough, you've been engaged enough that you can sit and breathe because you're at your best. If not, then you are returning to your best. And this is something you can say to yourself if you need to, put an affirmation together like I am the presence of health, wealth, and happiness. Or Ya Wadud, Ya Salam, Ya Fatah, or whatever works for you. Otherwise, if you don't do these things, then you go back to the default, which is and to me, that's kind of the overarching container of surrender. That surrender is recognizing that there are parts of you that have identities that are not right, and you're working on it so that you can be closer to Allah. And when you're close to Allah, then you're coming to your nominal state. And you're coming into where you are supposed to be. And finding those things that help you get to that place and maintain it is part of your job. That's your responsibility.
It's a nice way that the natural state of a human or the normal state of a human is to be content and to be, with Allah, be happy.
Yeah, exactly. So finding what that looks like and experimenting. There's not one right way. There is a combination of ways for each of us, and not comparing ourselves to others. We're all here to learn from each other, but the comparing doesn't help. Each of us has our own strengths and weaknesses, and inventorying what those are honestly is our job. Whatever works for you. That's why Sufism isn't a religion, because each of you is completely different. I can't preach this is how things should be. I can advise and suggest breathing is good.
I was listening to you talking about, you can't make, us without bashing two stars together and all that kind of thing. And how everything has this, long evolutionary physics process behind it. And then I was thinking, then what about those stories and this kind of intuition I have that this is possible, that anything is possible, that Allah could kind of wink and create 7 green chickens, like whatever it is, how does that fit into this? Like things have a certain way of happening in this universe, you know, like that there are rules and tendencies towards everything. But I think something about what you said about stopping and intention and being an awareness kind of resonated with as the answer to that. That when everything is stable and focused, then it's like the power of this, like of the heart and the mind to transform, like Allah coming through. If you're out of the way, then yeah, Allah can do anything because there's that light from the beginning of the universe that can transform anything, but you have to be still enough to not interfere with it.
That's right. You have to be out of the way to allow the light to come through. And then things happen that flow. And it's not like you do anything. It's more like you're more of a franchise of Allah. You go, okay, we got one right here. Let's do it right through here. Yeah, Muhyiddin. Yeah, he's the guy. Right there. Yep, good. And you go, wow, that was cool.
Yeah, and it certainly wasn't from me.
Yes, that's right. And you go, Alhamdulillah. Okay. Next. What's next? And to be, grounded, centered, and trying to stay at your nominal state and find out what that is so that you can find ways to maintain it and support it. That's important. That's also part of our responsibility. Where do we work best? How do we achieve balance? And part of it is, like I'm saying, is identify those things that we pretend that we are. I am this, I am that. I'm a fireman, I'm a teacher, I'm a pianist, I am a this. No, you're not. That may be something that you do sometimes, but that isn't who you are. You're love in a chimpanzee package. Isn't that a paradox? Yeah, how about that? More mysteries. What would life be without mysteries? Now, Mui, you mentioned something about stories, right? And to me, that the idea of imagination is prevalent in a lot of us. Some of us are a little bit more obsessed with it than others. I think this is kind of one of those side effects of having this kind of brain and learning how to connect with others and with Allah and having a sensitivity to energy. And I think it's a blessing that we can come up with ideas and stories that help us understand ourselves and our relationships. I think it's a side effect of what one aspect of it is a side effect of having this kind of trillions of cells all grouped together into a this trillions of cells all, and we think there's a me here, and that's kind of which of these cells are you, huh? It doesn't work that way. I think some of it is developed from surviving, and another is the aspect of just being and all the possibilities of being. And yes, with Allah, anything is possible. I remember asking Sheikh one time, is there resurrection? Do we have, multiple lives? He said, who's in charge of this place? I said, Allah. Well, is anything possible with Allah? Yes. Oh, right. Thank you. Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen Rahmanir Rahim Maliki Yawmiddin Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in Ihdinas siratal mustaqim Siratal ladzina an'amta alayhim ghayril maghdubi alayhim waladdallin.
Thank you, Sheikh. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Salaam Alaykum.
Salam.
Please soon.
Salaam Alaykum, murids, seekers, curious, and interested listeners. We appreciate you and are happy to share our Sufi message. Your donation will help support our Sufi Center in Sydney, where we do zikr, sohbet, spiritual counseling, and healing services. We believe the message should be free, but it costs equipment, rental, services, software, and hardware to get this to you. So thank you for choosing our podcast among all the millions available. If you go to our website, AnsariSufiOrder.org, you will be able to donate through PayPal whatever you think this information is worth to you. Blessings and love, the Australian Ansari Sufi Order.